Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph will begin Nun Vav Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. We were discussing the Ari Levim, that the Ari Levim had around the city a tchum of 2,000 amas. 1,000 amas was migrish, was open areas, that area was not cultivated, and then the other 1,000 was saras akramim, or fields and orchards. So we learned before that the migrish comprised, the open area, we learned, comprised of a quarter of the total area. So we were trying to determine how is it that, where do we find that the migrash will come out to be a quarter of the whole area? How does that work out to say that the migrash, the open area, is a quarter of the total? So we had one explanation in the Gemara previously, and now Abaye is going to offer a different explanation how the migrash is a quarter of the total area. Abaye Amar, you have another scenario, another situation where you'll have the migrash that'll be a quarter of the total. You can have a case where the city is 1,000 by 1,000 amas. It's 1,000 amas square, 1,000 amas length and width. It's a square of 1,000 amas by 1,000 amas. So if the city is 1,000 by 1,000, then the migrash extends out 1,000 amas. Well, then, if the city is 1,000 by 1,000, if you extend out 1,000 amas in each direction, then the migrash should be, therefore, 1,000 amas in each direction, and it should extend out around the city 1,000 amas all around the city. And therefore, this should be the city with the migrash. And this should be the city with the migrash. If you extended 1,000 amas in each direction, then now this is your city, and your migrash is 1,000 amas. So it's 1,000 amas. So there's squares of 1,000 amas because the city has a length and a width of 1,000. You're extending out 1,000. So this should be now the city in the center with the migrash around it. Now the tchum extends out a further 1,000 amas. So the total tchum is 2,000 amas. Well, if you have the tchum, which is 2,000 amas, then you're extending out a further 1,000 amas. So therefore, from the city, you'd be extending out this much more, 1,000 amas more. Now it's still, the city is 1,000 amas length and width, but you'd be extending the tchum out 1,000 amas further. So therefore, you'd be extending out 1,000 amas. You'd have the tchum. Now this should be, therefore, the tchum of the city. The tchum of the city should then have a formation like this. The migrash is the first 1,000 amas, and the tchum extends out 1,000 amas further. So therefore, the tchum, now it should look like this, because you've extended the tchum out still by the same dimensions of the city, the length and the width, but you've extended out 1,000 amas further. So the tchumim are 8. The tchumim are 8. You have 4. You have the 4 areas that the tchum extends out, and they are 1,000 by 2,000. 1,000 by 2,000, 1,000 by 2,000, and you have 4 of these areas which are 1,000 by 2,000, 1,000 by 2,000. So therefore, you have now 8,000. So there's 8 million rather. 8 million. It's 1,000 by 2,000 is 8 million square amas. And Kran's Chama V'Shitzer. And the corners, there's 4 corners. Now the corners, you've extended out 1,000. So to fill the corners, you need a square of 1,000 by 2,000. to fill the corners, because you've extended out here. This is now 1,000 plus 1,000 is 2,000. It's 1,000 plus 1,000 is 2,000. So you need a square of 2,000 by 2,000 to fill the corner. And you have 4 of these corners. You have 4 of the corners, 4 areas which are 1,000, about 2,000 by 2,000. So now you have your square. You have your city, which is 1,000 by 1,000. You have a migrish, which is 1,000 by 1,000 all around the city. And you have the tchumim, which extend out 2,000 by 1,000. So now, the tchumim come haver tamne. The tchumim, there's 4 of the areas that extend out, the verticals here, they extend out the tchum, which were 1,000 by 2,000. So each one is 2,000, each one is 2 million square amas, times 4 is 8 million. Then the kronais, the corners, are 2,000 by 2,000. That's each corner is 4 million square amas. There's 4 of them. That's 16 million. So the total of the tchum and the corners is 24 million. Dal arba de tchumim v'arba de kronais. Now we said the migrish. Was an area of 4 squares of 1 by 1, 1,000 by 1,000. So each square that it extends out from the city, each square is 1,000 by 1,000. That's 1 million square. Times 4 is 4. And then you have the kronais and the corners, also 4 in the corners. So when we had the migrish, it was 8 squares of 1 by 1 all around, 8 squares of 1 by 1, so that's 8 million. So your total is 24 million. The migrish is a total of 8. So the total of the migrish is 8. Frek the Gemara tells Sahaba, but that's a third. 8 out of, if you're telling me the total is 24 and the migrish is 8, that's a third of the total. Gemara says, no, Misaber b'ribuah kamar. Again, we're not talking about a city that's square. B'igula kamar, we're talking about a round city. Kamar maruba yesra igul. How much is a square more than the circle? So how much is that the difference is a revia, a quarter, a fourth. Dal revia, pashala shisa. So take off. We had the migrish over here. The migrish surrounding a square city, which was 8 million square amas. Take off a quarter, you're left with 6. So therefore, you have the shisa mechavdal rivahama. 6 out of 24 is a quarter. So that's how you get a quarter. Ravina gives another explanation. My Ravia, when it says it's a quarter, we say that the migrish is a quarter of the total. Ravia de tchumim. He means a Ravia when you measure only the tchumim, meaning as follows. Ravina is going back to the original scenario that we're not talking about a round city. We're talking about a city that is square. And we're not talking about a city that's 1,000 by 1,000. We're talking about a city which is 2,000 by 2,000, like we had in the original assumptions. So therefore he says as follows. You have a city that's 2,000 by 2,000. Now he says the tchumim, when we measure the tchumim, we don't measure the tchumim and we don't measure them only all around the city as we assumed before. They're not measured all around the city. He says when we measure the tchumim, we measure the tchumim only in the areas that protrude from the city, not all around the city. So therefore he says as follows. The tchumim come like this. So it comes out, it's 1,000 by 2,000. The city is 2,000 by 2,000. The tchum is measured only 1,000 out, but it's also not measured all around the city. It's only measured where the city, on the each side of the city, but not all around. So it does not include the corners. So therefore, we have the scenario as follows. The city is 2,000 by 2,000. The tchumim only do not include the corners. The tchumim do not, the migrish rather, the migrish does not include the corners. The corners are not included in the migrish. The migrish has on each side of the city, but not the corners. The migrish is 1,000 by 2,000. So the migrish over here is 1,000 by 2,000. That means that each one is 2 million. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the migrish is 4. The migrish is 4. Now, the city has a tchum of 2,000 by 2,000. The entire tchum is 2,000 by 2,000. So when you take the tchum into account, so the tchum of the city is all around. It's 2,000 by 2,000. And then you have the corners. You have the corners as well. So now this is the tchum of the city. The entire area of the city with the tchum, each one is 2,000 by 2,000. So that's 2, 4, 6. 2, 4, 6. It's a total of 36 million square. And as we said before, the tchumim, the migrish of it is 4. Now, when you take away the city is 4. So the total of the tchum area minus the city is 32. The migrish area, we said, was 4. The migrish area was only extended out only 1,000 by 2,000, and only on the sides. So the migrish was 4. The total area of the tchum minus the city is 32. That's a quarter. That's how you get a quarter. Rav Ashi Omar, my Ravia Dekronais. Rav Ashi says it's very similar to Ravina. He says, what the quarter? It's quarter by measuring by the kronos. So it's very similar to Ravina, but he says that the migrish was not extended from the sides of the city. Also, the migrish was not all around it, but the migrish was in the corners. So you had the migrish in the corners. So therefore, he says you have the 4 corners. And you have the 4 corners where you have the migrish, and you have 4 corners of 1,000 by 1,000 again. So the migrish is only 4. The migrish is 4. And the total area of the tchum of the city minus the city is 32. And again, that's how you have a quarter of the total. So perfecta Gemara. So Amrle Ravina says, Bishlam, according to me, we understand that it's saviv, it's on each side. It's not in the corners, but on each side. But according to you, the pasuk says that the migrish is saviv, it surrounds the city. So Amrle Ravina, hi saviv, the pasuk says saviv, and according to you, how is this considered around, surrounding the city? It's just in the corners. Rav Ashi says, my saviv the kronos. Being in the corner, it's on all 4 corners, and that's considered surrounding the city. If you don't say that corners, being on the corners, is considered surrounding, by the korban oila, it says that they throw the dam al mizbeach saviv, that they throw it on around the mizbeach. They don't put the blood all around the mizbeach; they put it on the corners. So, and that's considered saviv. That's termed as saviv. Elamai saviv the kronos. So that's called saviv. So he says, now going back to the previous terutzim, going back to Abai and Rava. Now they said the city is a round city. According to their scenarios, the city was a round city. And therefore, they calculated the migrish being as a quarter as a round city, because of the difference between the areas between the circle and the square. But he asks, but you have the Mursha de Karnasa. When you have a round city, when you measure the tchum, so like we said before, you square it off first. Now, if this is the city and the migrish surrounds it, but when you measure the tchum, you have to square it off. And these corners are going to eat in to the migrish that's around it. So according to your calculation, when you calculated that the migrish is a quarter of the total, but when you measure, if you have to now square off the round city, these corners are eating into the migrish that's surrounding it. So that's going to reduce the size of the migrish, and therefore it's not going to end up being a quarter anymore. So he answered b'masa egulta. He answered with a round city. So he didn't understand quite what he was saying. He thought that he was asking a kasha on Abaye and Rava, that it doesn't work out to be a quarter. And he answered like we said before in the Gemara, no, Abaye and Rava is talking about a round city. So now he reinstated the question. He asked again, yes, it's true. Yes, I know that it is in a round city. But my question is that when you square off, when you measure the tchum and you square it off, it's a round city, and these corners are going to eat into the migrish, and your migrish is going to be less than a quarter. So he answered, he says, it's only we view it, when we measure the tchum, we view it like it's squared off in order to make the measurement. So we measure the alpayim amma. But in actual fact, it's a round city. And in actual fact, the migrish surrounds the city. So we don't reduce the migrish by the corners. Well, yes, when we measure the tchum, we square it off. So we imagine that the city's squared, and we measure the alpayim amma in each direction from the square. But the city's round, and the migrish surrounds it and is around it. So we don't eat into the area of the migrish. It's completely around it, even though we measure from here, but the migrish is from here. It's from the circle. So going back now to what we learned before, we learned earlier that when you have a round city and you square it off, you'll gain on the corners if the city is 2,000 amas. If it has a diameter of 2,000 amas, so by squaring it off, you gain the corners, and you'll gain 400 in each corner, a total of the diagonal of 800 amas. And the diagonal is longer than the straight line by 1.4. If the city has a diameter from circle to circle of 2,000, from corner to corner on a diagonal, it's going on a slope on a diagonal, you'll get 800. How much is a square, the area of a square, more than a circle? How much is the square, the area, more than the circle area? He says it's revia. It's a quarter. Now it's a quarter when you judge it that milbar from the net area. So this is it's a quarter larger than this. But when you judge it from how much do you have to add on to the circle to make the square, so that would be a third. So that comes out to be a third. So when we say it's a quarter, then we say that it's a quarter, but it's a third of the circle. Now, if you take a third of the circle is 2,000 amas. So when you take it's a third of that, so since Hane Tamne Meya, so you don't have 800, Shis Meya, V'Shisin, V'Sheva, Nachit Tilsahava. It's 666 and 2/3. If you take a third of 2,000, a third of 2,000 is not 800, it's 666 and 2/3. So how do you come to the measurement of 800? Amar Le, he said to him, no, when you're talking about the differences of a third of the circle that you have to add on to form the square, that's when you're talking about the areas. But we're not talking here about areas. When we say that you gain 800 on the corners, that we're talking about over here the length of the line. So over here we're saying but if you want to measure the distance of the alachsan of the line, how much longer this line is than the straight line, how much the diagonal line is longer than the straight line, then you say you need more. The Omar Mar kol amsa b'ribua, every amma that's square, amso trei chumsha balachsaina. So it has, you have to extend it an amma and 2/5 for the diagonal. So if you want an amma beribua, if it's square, an amma square, the diagonal has to be extended to make the square 1 2/5. So that's 1.4. So therefore, as the diameter is 2,000, the length of the diagonal of the sloped diagonal line is 2/5 more, is 1.4, is 800 extra ammas. So that's how we come to these calculations. Let's see the Mishnah. Zok the Mishnah. Noistem karpa fleir. Div Ramer. Ramer says that before you add on and you measure the alpine mama for the tchum, first you give a karpa, make a karpa for the ear. So you add on an area, an open area of 17 2/3 amma to the city, and then you measure the alpine amma of the tchum. But they said no, it's not for a standard measurement of the tchum. It's only in what was that karpa mentioned? It's in an area between two cities. If between the two cities, on each side of the city, there's 70 2/3 ammas, so therefore, if you measure 70 2/3 ammas from each city, and if the cities are within that area, if they're within that area of the 70 2/3 of each city, meaning that there's no more than 141 1/3 ammas between each of the cities, if there isn't a distance between the two cities, if it's not more than 141 1/3 ammas, so you have the two cities and there's just this space between them. They have only the space between them. It's not more than 141 2/3. Then oisim karpa v'shteim leis echad. Therefore, we treat it as one city. So when you measure the tchum, when you're measuring the tchum of the cities, you consider it as one. So when you're measuring the alpine amma, you measure 2,000 ammas from here, and therefore this city, you don't measure their 2,000 ammas from here in this direction. You measure it from here because we treat this as one city. And similarly from here, we measure the 2,000 ammas from here in this direction. We don't measure this city from here because we treat this as one city. So they have 2,000 ammas. They can go the entire area of this city, and 2,000 ammas here. And they can go the entire area of this city, and 2,000 ammas there. We treat this as one city. And if you have three cities together in a group, if between the two outer ones there's no more than 141 2/3, then you treat it at all three. The middle one causes the three of them to become like one. We merge them all together and it's considered to be one large city, and you measure from the extremes of the ends of each city. We treat it as one city, which is therefore measured from each end. It's 2,000 ammas from this one, and this city can go all the way 2,000 ammas in that direction, and similarly this one can go 2,000 ammas from measures from that direction. We'll see in the Gemara what configuration these three cities have, and we'll discuss it. In fact, the Gemara Menahani Mili, where do we know this din of a karpav? Amar Ravad Amar Kromik Kirha Ir V'chutza, from the wall of the city and outward. Omra Torah Tain Chutza V'Arkach Medoid. Mekira V'chutza, Tain a Chutza, and add an area, a karpav, and then start measuring.